Hi, everybody. My name is Neil Seidman, and I'm co-chair of the Public Education Committee for ADAA. That's the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. And welcome to our webinar, Managing Coronavirus Anxiety, Tips and Strategies for Families. These webinars are presented by the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, which is the leading nonprofit organization in the field of anxiety and depression. And I just want to, tell everyone, really take advantage of the amazing resources on our website. That's adaa.org. And you'll find a really good list of treatment providers. Just click on Find a Therapist from the homepage. As well as there's a free peer-to-peer online support group, which you can also find on the homepage. And then finally, you can support ADAA with a small charitable donation on the website. So let me introduce our panel. Debra Kissen, Dr. Debra Kissen. Hi, Debra. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Kissen is the co-chair of the Public Education Committee for ADAA. She's executive director of the Light on Anxiety CBT Treatment Center in Chicago. Dr. Kissen is the author of Panic Workbook for Teens and Rewire Your Anxious Brain for Teens. Thanks for joining us, Debra. And Dr. David Rosmarin. Hi, David. Thanks for joining. Dr. Rosmarin is the founder and director of the Center for Anxiety in New York City. He's assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He's a board-certified psychologist, and he's the author of Spirituality, Religion, and Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, a guide for clinicians. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, Ken Goodman. Thanks for joining us, Ken. Ken is a clinical social worker who specializes in the treatment of anxiety disorders and OCD. He's a member of the board of directors of ADAA, and he's also the founding director of quietmindsolutions.com. He produced the Anxiety Solutions series, which is a comprehensive step-by-step audio program. And he also wrote Break Free from Anxiety, which is a coloring self-help book. So thanks everybody for joining us. And what we'd like to do is just cover some of the really commonly asked questions that we get about managing the anxiety and stress that we're all dealing with right now. And, Ken, maybe you could take this first question. How much news should we be reading and watching going forward now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we've done such a good job as individuals and as a country in terms of social distancing. But for people who are really suffering with anxiety, I would encourage them to do a lot of media distancing, because I do find in my practice the people that are the most anxious are the people that are consuming the most media, whether that's reading articles online or social media. I mean, it's everywhere and you can't really escape it, but you can certainly limit it. And if you find that when you are consuming media about the coronavirus and that's triggering anxiety, you should really limit it as much as possible. And you will definitely learn about the things that are the most important, because those will rise to the top and you'll find that information out. But I would try to limit it as much as you can if you are really anxious.
And Neil, just adding to that, just one thing to watch for that I do see in the clients that I work with, there tends to be extremes of the over news consumers where it becomes a checking compulsion. Like, let me see the ticker of how many people are diagnosed today with coronavirus, how many deaths today, what's the data right now in my city, and so they're the people that are checking and checking and watching. And then there are some people, maybe a little bit less, that are utterly avoiding, and they're trying so hard to not see the word corona and to not see the word dry cough that it's actually a form of thought suppression, where the very act of don't think about corona is going to make it so ever present in your brain. So I'd say if you are at that screen, at that that screen, at that extreme, there are ways to kind of do little mini exposures to get your mind at least habituated to certain words so that they're not constantly coming up for you as you're trying so hard to not think about it. So it's not the majority, but if that's happening, there's some really good links on the ADA website around intrusive thoughts and trying really hard to not think about something. So I would just add to that.
Yeah. So really good point. So some people might find that they're constantly checking what's happening, what are the numbers in my area, and that's something that you want to encourage people to reduce.
Absolutely, because the more you do that, the more anxious you're going to get. It's like people who are trying to lose weight every day, they're checking their weight. It's not what's recommended.
Yeah. What about at bedtime? Is that a good idea to like have a news moratorium at a
I
certain?
was going to chime in about that actually. Yeah, if you're first, I think both what Ken and Deborah said are sage advice, and it's a balance of the exposure if you're avoiding and trying to limit it, which I think is what most people are doing. They need to limit it, like Ken's saying very very aptly. But I definitely wouldn't do exposure at nighttime. Typically, I would recommend people shutting off their devices half an hour before bedtime. In the current crisis, it's at least 60 minutes. No devices before bedtime. If you're going to use a device, use a phone and call somebody and have a conversation with them as opposed to scrolling social media. It's not the time to be checking any information you need. Let's say you go to bed at 11, any information from 10 a.m. until you'd wake up in the morning, you're going to find out the next day.
So how about that as a good tip, just a general tip, an hour before bedtime,
Sure.
off the news, don't check the news, don't scroll the Facebook and Twitters, call somebody if you want, but really
Mm-hmm.
give your
Right.
brain a chance to settle down a little bit.
And I know for this webinar, we were going to be honing in on the implications for families as a system and what it's like moving through the stress and anxiety and the bonding and some of the good moments too of this really strange time that we're in. So that idea of limiting screen time and with teens home, with kids home, and trying to avoid power struggles of pulling technology away from your children or teens at a certain times. If it's just a family culture you're trying to create of this is hard on all of us and I want to check my phone too and I'm turning off the Wi-Fi signal at 11 p.m. and that's when we're all
Oh,
this
that's
is
a
really
great
all of
idea.
us. So
Turn
some
off
way
the
that it's
Wi-Fi
not
if you can.
it's the environments and you could set your own timers after 3 hours or a certain time. So there are all these ways to set your phone to or your technology, but often we don't always use it. So I would say as family rules, this is about us all trying to create health, and it's hard for me, it's hard for my kids. I'm not ripping the technology from you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the next question, maybe Deborah, you could start with this one. How much should I tell my young children about the virus? What should I say and what should I not say?
And I think this is going to go across all of the answers that we give is that there's, of course, no black and white answers and there's no magic formula. If I do X, then that's really bad. And if I do Y, then I'm getting this coronavirus sorry, that's my dog, life management perfectly. It's really going to depend a little bit on your children. And I would say start with where they're at. So if they're not really asking about it and they're not really curious about it, you don't need to flood them with excess information. But if they're asking and they're curious, really respect their wisdom and their ability to handle a lot of complicated aspects of life. And so by saying, oh, there's nothing happening, everything's fine, that could actually create more anxiety because they know something's going on. And so you can have an age appropriate conversation where allow them to ask you questions and fill in the blanks that they're currently experiencing. You don't have to guess what they know or don't know.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't be afraid to talk with our children about it, but provide information that is factual, but not emotional, exaggerated, alarming, or worst case scenario predictions. I mean, children are very impressionable. I remember many years ago when my son, I think, was in fifth grade, we were going to the park, nice park, we've been there hundreds of times, and suddenly he got super anxious, started to cry, a panic attack, running back to the car. Well, I find out that he looks up in the sky, sees a helicopter, he sees a police car, and he sees a white van. Well, just the week before at school, they were told to stay away from people in vans because you could get kidnapped. So that triggered a lot of anxiety from him. And then for the next year, he didn't want to go to the park, didn't want to walk the dog outside. So, in our efforts to protect our children from the virus, we might be doing more harm by telling them things that are alarming. So you want to be reassuring. You want to give them data that is current, because right now the chances of actually dying of it are incredibly small. Um, it's a very small percentage currently, and you have to put that in children's terms. So I was thinking, well, how do you do that? Well, the football game that we went to a couple months ago, where there was 100,000 people in the stadium, out of 100,000 people, one person might die. And that kind of gives them a percentage of, oh, okay, well, you're not likely to die. We're not likely to die. But people could get sick.
So maybe, David, you might want to take this next one. Kind of a similar question but this one's about social media. So especially, I guess, teens spending a lot of time on their screen, on their phone, on social media. And so the question that came in is, how can I help my kids navigate the information about the virus on
Yeah,
their social media?
I think in many cases the kids have a lot more access to information than the parents do, and they're a lot more technologically savvy and a lot more plugged in and in the know. I know my kids have been teaching me a lot about what's going on with the coronavirus. I mean, it makes it easier, I guess, for me. I don't have to check the news as much. At the same time, I think just to echo what Ken and Debra said, it's a matter of how we approach it with kids. And if we're calm about it, if we're factual about it, if we are not saying that there's nothing to be concerned about, but at the same time we're keeping it in check and being realistic about what the actual dangers are, that's a great opportunity to teach kids how to navigate this. I mean, it's really more about how we help them to take the information, to understand the real risks without having our anxiety or their anxiety take over.
Yeah, we really have to monitor our own anxiety and stay away from words that are alarming and have a conversation with your child. Ask them what kinds of things they have been hearing about the virus and then give them correct information, because they might have a lot of misinformation. And also just be very aware of, like, the television on in the room. Um, I remember my other child, he in middle school would love to watch horror movies, but he was freaked out about the news. Like when the news was on in the house, he would walk out of that room because it was scary for him. So just be careful about what is on in the common areas of the house.
Good. Okay, here's a question that.
And just building on what Ken said, this is all very interesting and helpful. And I guess I'm just going to kind of give the other perspective a tiny bit, but also be careful too. If there is something on, I see some parents kind of, I don't see because I'm social distancing, but I know this rushing to turn off the TV or rushing to move a newspaper, flip it over, because it kind of sends a signal that whatever this is, you can't handle this. And whatever this is really bad. So it's all about flexibility and just kind of playing around a little bit with what's working and what's not working, and kind of monitoring how we're handling the stressful moment and where there are areas to maybe change it up a little bit.
Okay.
Right.
So Ken, maybe you want to start off on this next one, which is a very challenging question that comes up a lot. Here's one that came in. I'm working at home and I'm also supposed to be homeschooling my kids, and I'm feeling overwhelmed. Any tips could help me?
Well, it's a very overwhelming time, and particularly if you're in that situation, of course you're going to be overwhelmed. You're doing twice as much work at the same exact time, and you need to give yourself permission to be, not perfect. You're going to just try to do the best that you can, try to do your work, try to help children with their work, but it's not going to be easy, and probably you're just going to have to find some strategies that are going to best work for your particular situation. But remind yourself, this is temporary. I just need to kind of survive it for right now. Like a surfer in the wave, I'm just trying to ride it out as best as I can.
Yeah, if there are moments that parents who are at home and trying to work and dealing with the financial stress and kids and homeschooling, if there aren't at least a couple of moments every day where you're feeling very overwhelmed, then I don't know, something's not adding up. I would expect that everybody at some point during every single one of the coming days until this resolves, and who knows when that's going to be, is going to have some difficult moments, and that's part of life at this point. That's part of the crisis. It's a matter of weathering the storm, and par for the course, I believe is the term.
So is it okay if I'm not doing my work perfectly or up to the old standard?
Right. And I think
my kids are not doing as much schoolwork as they were doing before.
And if you gain 10 pounds and a whole bunch of other things and aren't sticking to your exercise routine, the list goes on.
Yeah. And I think Ken really put it well of this is really a good time to give up perfectionistic standards. And it's healthy work no matter what, that it's not realistic. We're going to get things wrong. That's the one thing that we can guarantee. And this is a really perfect time to work on tolerating good enough living, or I'm going to survive. It might not be thriving. Like my dog right now, who's going stir crazy. I'm so sorry. So, and so it might, if your kids learn a thing or two is during the homeschooling, but really set your expectations low, and you might not even meet those, and that's okay, because you're getting through a tough time, and it's impressive for all of us for what we're doing.
Deborah, I really like that phrase that you just gave about good enough. So instead of trying to be perfect, how about instead of that, how about just aspiring for things to be good enough?
Perfect. Perfectly imperfect.
Good enough is perfect. That's the new perfect.
Okay, here's another really good topic. So here's a question that came in. I'm feeling disconnected and I'm feeling isolated, but I'm supposed to be staying at home. How am I supposed to deal with this?
Well, I think we have to try to preserve some semblance of normalcy in a time that's not normal, and it's hard to do that. But you have to just modify what you normally do. So if you love to go to the gym, well, you're going to have to find a way to work out in your home or run around the neighborhood. You have to try to find new things, perhaps, do creative things. If children sometimes don't even know how to write a letter or send a postcard. So let's write a letter and send a postcard to grandma. That could be a fun activity. Or you have all these
letter? How do you do that?
Yeah, a letter. Can you imagine snail mail? We have all these pictures on our phone and our computer. Let's organize them. Let's put them in a virtual photo album with captions and things like that. Or go online and get make a photo cup and send it to your grandparents. You have to find creative ways to deal with the isolation. At the same time, helping out people like maybe grandparents who are by themselves, how to do FaceTime with them. So these are some of the strategies you can use.
Yeah, it's extremely important to connect today and to have, I would say, one-on-one communication with people, not just keeping your Facebook profile up to date and Twitter and, engaging with people en masse. I think that's fine when before a crisis, when you can also have one-on-one opportunities to either go on dates or to, have one-on-one time with people. But it's definitely time to pick up the phone, have a phone call with an old friend, with a family member, with people you haven't, look up your old high school friends and give them a ring. Everybody today is looking for someone to connect with. And that being the case, it's very easy to find other people. In some ways, it's easier to make connections today than it ever was, kind of ironically. So there definitely are social engagements. Just another idea. My office did this week. We had a happy hour. Everybody poured their own drink, and we sat around and had most of the more than half the staff were on the Zoom, and we hung out for probably an hour and a half, just kicking it, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just a lot of fun.
Using the Zoom platform.
Yeah.
And
It's a
David,
great
before
idea.
that, when was the last time you had a happy hour where so many people attended for your office?
It's a good question. No, we've never had it before, ever. We've had groups like, at a conference, well, whoever's there, 10, 12 of
Right.
us. We've never had that many people come, but you're right. It's
Yeah,
funny.
our weekly supervision, our clinical supervision meetings, we normally have 15 or so people depending on people's schedule, but we've been having full staff are coming. So it's been actually really neat to sort of have 30 people coming together where normally it's a lot harder to all come together. So not to be two glasses half full, but also thinking I have a lot of clients that have challenges that they set for themselves of going out and meeting new people, and they attend different meetup groups, and they have been feeling a little stagnant over the last 2 weeks that they can't meet some of those goals. And we've looked at different online groups. There's so much going on that you don't need to flood yourself with the online Pilates class and the interact. Everyone's offering that, so I know it could feel like too much, but maybe picking one thing a day that you wouldn't normally do. And I heard on CNN last night there was a party with a purpose where it just became this Insta Zoom party. So there are a lot of unique forms of coming together that are happening. You don't have to do everything, and you're not going to do everything, but maybe just challenge yourself to one thing out of your comfort zone that you wouldn't normally do, but is of interest to you.
Yeah, if you were going to go out on a date, or if your spouse and was going to go out with another couple, you can do what David was suggesting. Just have a Zoom meal. You're eating at your home, and they're eating at their home, and you're just kind of socializing and eating together.
And you're splitting the check.
That's right.
So finding creative ways of taking advantage of our technology to make
Yeah.
these connections. And I love all the different ideas. I hope that our viewers can get some of their own ideas that maybe they haven't thought of. Okay, now here's a very interesting question that came in. I'm staying with my in-laws since the virus hit. The problem is they're not careful about washing their hands and disinfecting things like they should be. What do I do? Who wants to
That's
say
a tricky one. That's tricky.
I mean, the question in and of itself, not to judge, but even the should in the question is a little, they're not washing their hands the way they should be. And maybe this person is referring to the CDC guidelines and the official alphabet 3 times, but there's a certain nuance to the individual choices within a household of how people are, even between spouses, of how they define, like, this is good enough, how I'm washing my hands, and this is the surfaces. And we kind of have to, that's a really hard situation this person's in, but we also have to respect somewhat individual choices within households, or it's just going to make for so much of a more stressful situation, and that's not good for the immune system anyway. What we do know is sharing germs through contact surfaces is not the same thing as when you're coughing at someone or when you're breathing at someone. So I would just say, if you want to go back over surfaces in a way that makes you feel comfortable, but trying to avoid teaching or training others you're environment is gonna help manage these really challenging times.
Yeah, so maybe what I'm hearing is putting things in perspective, that the physical social distancing that we're all doing, that's the main thing that we're supposed to do. And as long as everybody is doing that to the most that they can, and the individual differences about, how long they're washing their hands or how many surfaces they're wiping down, there can be some individual differences.
Well, and it's also accepting the limits of our individual control, kind of like accepting the limits. We're not perfect, and we also don't have ultimate control over others. We're all being challenged in ways that are a part of life, but it's so much more obvious, the limits of our personal control and how much we can change others, even if we want to, even if we think it's right that they should be doing things differently. Can we really get people to change? So those are just.
And trying to make them change is going to cause a lot of arguing. And that in itself is going to create a lot of tension in the home. And I think you have to just let go of your desire to control other people and just focus on what you have control over.
I guess one piece I'll just add to that is it's for sure letting go of control, and definitely not trying to, especially your in-laws, especially you're in their house. So, you're at a disadvantage to begin with. So don't mess. Definitely don't poke the bear. But if you're feeling really anxious about it, one way to discuss it with them is actually by saying, I don't know if you realize this, but I'm really struggling here. As opposed to you should do this, it's I have a need for you to do this. It's a very different conversation where I'm expressing my need for someone to do something versus what they should be doing. The latter conversation will always go south, always. The former conversation, maybe, and it's no guarantee, maybe they'll have empathy for me, maybe they'll have compassion, and maybe there's some possibility of change. If they don't, though, can't have resentment for it, gotta let it go. So that's one potential idea, is to discuss
So
it.
I'm feeling stressed and worried when you come in from being out at work and you don't wash your hands the first thing. That I'm
I
getting.
noticed that and it seems to me that that's happening, and I'm feeling really nervous and worried about it, and it's probably just my anxiety, but it's really uncomfortable for me. This whole situation is so overwhelming for me in the first place. Is there anything we can do in order to make it a little bit easier on me?
Yeah, really good advice. Really good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's maybe one of our last questions. We got actually a number of questions that bring up how do I go about getting counseling and therapy when everybody's supposed to be at home? So I think these questions can lead into a little discussion about, hey, can I do therapy or counseling session on video chat and what's called telehealth? And who wants to take that one?
I think prior to the virus, only a small percentage of therapists were actually doing telehealth, but now everyone's doing it. So, all you have to do is try to find someone in your state and reach out. And ADAA has a great search engine for therapists who treat anxiety disorders and OCD. So definitely use our website to find therapists.
Yeah, so that's everybody that's watching. It's adaa.org. And then right on the home page is a big button that you can tap. It says Find a Therapist. And even if it doesn't say in the listing, very likely the therapists in your state are going to be offering telehealth, be able to do a session. And then also for people definitely people in New York State, David Rosmarin's clinic. You can find his clinic by going to his website, which is centerforanxiety.org. That's centerforanxiety.org. And right now, I understand his clinic is offering, actually, for no charge, a 30-minute consultation. So that's really a wonderful opportunity, especially for people in New York State. If you're in Illinois, Debra's clinic has a lot of availabilities now for telehealth. and you can find her clinic going to her website, which is Light on Anxiety, lightonanxiety.com. Definitely if you're in Illinois.
And now I'm feeling competitive of David's generosity, so I need to meet him there. It's a good kind of competition. So inspired by that idea. So for Light on Anxiety, that we'd be happy to offer 30-minute free consultations for somebody who needs.
Wonderful.
I just got to let my staff know, but come through me, Dr. Debra Kissen at Light on Anxiety, and then we'll get you set up, because I'm inspired by my colleagues in New York. So
thanks. Deborah, I'll just tell you this, that I spoke it over with my staff this week, and we also do DBT, so we have some pretty intense, cases that we're dealing with. And a lot of my staff just said, we know that this is a national crisis. We realize like there's a lack of people who are, available. At least the public doesn't realize that they're available, even though many times they are. So I hope that my staff have been really invigorated by it, and I'm sure yours will as well, because, we ultimately, everybody got into the field to help other people. And this is just a great need and a great opportunity for everyone. So call us up.
And for everybody out there, some really wonderful self-help resources on through Ken's website. And his website is kengoodmantherapy.com. kengoodmantherapy.com.
And I'm in California.
Right, in California. But anybody can go onto his website and take advantage of a lot of his self-help resources.
I'm a solo practitioner. I cannot do a 30-minute free consultation. I'm so busy right now. But I usually talk to people when they first call at least 10 to 15 minutes anyways.
So for Los Angeles.
One more thing here is that don't underestimate the efficacy of a self-help approach or of telehealth. There's good data to support that for many anxiety conditions, self-help is extremely effective for people who can sit and actually do it, and that that does require time and effort to do. But if people are going through a self-help book, even if it's 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day for the next couple weeks, that could definitely get you through. And also for telehealth, you don't necessarily have to show up in person. Obviously, it's better to have in-person sessions than telehealth, but there's good data on it. So people do have options today.
Right. And if you purchase a self-help workbook, you could even ask someone, a loved one, a friend, to be kind of your coach through it. And so you could go chapter by chapter with them, even if they're not struggling with the same thing. They could kind of hold you accountable. You could talk through, okay, for this week, these are the assignments I'm going to do. And just a way, it's hard for all of us to be fully self-driven about different aspects of life where we're looking to grow and create change. So you could really find an advocate, someone who cares about you, and they could do a lot for you. Them, and a workbook can go a long way also.
Yeah, and don't just read it, really engage with the material, study it, put into practice what the author has written about. Because reading it, is like, if you just read it, it's like reading a cookbook in bed. You have nothing to show for it at the end. So really want to just study the material and put what the author is writing about into practice.
And to find other really great self-help resources, you can find a tremendous amount of free information as well as recommendations for books on the ADAA website, again, adaa.org.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, thank you, everybody, for doing this. I think it was really helpful, and I want to thank everybody for watching. Feel free to like it and share it. And then for our next webinar, if you have a question you'd like us to address, go ahead and send your question to webinars@adaa.org. webinars@adaa.org. Well, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.